Hello guys and dolls, welcome back to Honey Badger 3D Print and Paint. Today we are taking a look at the creality K1 Max, creality's latest contender against the mighty Bambu. Before we get started, roll those credits and a quick word from our sponsor. PCBWay are proud sponsors of the channel. They offer industry-leading 3D printing services covering all types of materials and processes. They also offer industry-leading online CNC machine services from milling, machining, and turning in all the materials you could possibly need. They also offer a fully online prototyping PCB service. Everything from assembly through to design, you can do it all online with an easy system to use for quality. So for all of your needs, check out PCBWay in the link in the video description. So let's start with the obvious. This machine was built from the ground up to specifically compete with the Bambu Carbon, right? It is a slightly larger build volume. It's 300 by 300 by 300. It does have a creality-ified version of Clipper. It does not currently, and I say currently, come with an AMS. There is a conversation going on about that happening in the relatively near future. There is a slightly smaller version of this called the K1. I think that's 235 by 235, but this one is 300 by 300. 18% larger than the Bambu X1 Carbon, and that number more than likely features in a lot of different areas because it's also roughly about 20% cheaper than a Bambu Carbon, and it's roughly 20% faster than a Bambu Carbon. So there's an awful lot of trying to go about 20% more for 20% less. Let's start off with a quick round robin of the machine. Okay, so we have perspex side panels, a plastic back panel, but a glass door and a glass top. We have an auxiliary part cooling fan, a dual cooling fan on the tool head, and an auxiliary cooling fan on the side of the machine. This does feature LiDAR and a webcam. Both of those work very well. It is obviously a Core XY kinematic in this. As I say, it uses a creality-ified version of Clipper. Claims it'll go up to about 600 millimeters a second. We'll do another video where we do some real speed tests on it. Right now, this is about out of the box. How does it perform? You do have to use Creality Print if you want to use the Wi-Fi service. Now, I did manage to get this working with Orca Slicer, although the internet connection on it was a little bit ropey. Sometimes it would upload, sometimes it wouldn't start. It's not designed to work with Orca Slicer, so I think they're bringing out some new profiles that are meant to fix that. And Creality have said they are going to be open sourcing the firmware fairly soon. Creality Print is the slicer you are supposed to use. I'm not one for hating things, generally. Consider myself a person who likes a lot of stuff. I've even eaten a kiwi. And on the outside, you'd think, why would someone put that in their mouth? Well, I'd rather put a kiwi in my mouth than use Creality Slicer. I don't like it. So I don't like really any of the features of it. I don't like the way the slicer's laid out. I don't like the way that it's only got two profiles, high speed, which is a 0.25 profile, and normal speed, which isn't. It's a 0.2 profile. You can download an extra high quality profile that does it at a 0.10 layer height. All of these were done on its normal setting, which is a 0.2. They came out really nicely. It's done a really, really nice job. I did do this one on the high quality setting, so that's the 0.10 setting. But everything else here is done on a 0.2. Everything printed really well. So I've done some stuff with the hyper PLA. The only reason that I would suggest using hyper PLA is if you really need like maybe 10% extra speed. So I printed with the hyper PLA profile that is in Creality print, and I managed to get a benchy down to, I think, about 18 minutes a benchy. This one is a 24-minute benchy, and it's just done in eSun PLA. Not using hyper PLA, I managed to get a benchy down to about 20 minutes. I don't think it's this one. I think it's a different one. But this one I think is like a 22 minute benchy. And it's come out really nicely. The amount you can push it, there's a few settings that you can change that will, you can lower your infill, and you can't do a one wall count on my version of Creality print, because every time I try and put the walls down to 1, when I try and slice anything, the slicer just crashes, just closes down. So I can only do 2 walls. With 2 walls, a 10% infill, and ramping the speed up to 600 millimeters a second, I can get hyper PLA down to an 18-minute benchy. I believe the one that comes on the SD card is a 16.5-minute benchy. But again, because I can't lower my walls to 1, I can't replicate that. I can only print the one that's on the SD card, and unless all I want to print is that one benchy, those settings are completely useless to me, because I can't replicate those settings to print something more useful than the single benchy they give me. But moaning aside, I do really like this machine. If I can get it tweaked to work well with Orca Slicer. So I did manage to do this vase in vase mode, and this was done in Orca Slicer. The print quality is stunning. It is very, very good extrusion. It printed very quickly. I was doing about 350 millimeters a second for my walls, which for spiralized outer contour is all you're doing. I've got things like this collapsible sword, which came out really nice, and I've also got some print in place Fab 365 stuff. We'll show you the models in a minute. Let's talk about, so I mean, design wise, anybody looking at this could be forgiven for confusing it with a Bambu X1 carbon. If I was to compare it practically, I would compare it more to the P1S. And the reason for that is because we haven't got a full aluminium body. We haven't got the AMS. And I think, fundamentally, I think the thing you should compare it most to is perhaps the P1S rather than the X1 carbon. The extra build volume is very welcome. It does a very good job. To be clear with Creality print, the slicer works and it does produce nice prints. I just don't like it. I am tired of having to have an individual slicer for every single machine that I get in. I am tired of people just creating their own versions of something that wasn't really amazing to begin with and adding nothing except their logo in a different color scheme. All right? I don't know where this sudden desire to become a software company has come from, but stop, because you're all bad at it. And it's not specifically Creality that are bad at it. You're all terrible at it. Bambu Studio is an anomaly, mainly because it's not really Bambu Studio. It's actually Orca Slicer, that they've reskinned and tweaked in a few different areas. Orca Slicer supports a lot more printers than Bambu Studio does, and the settings that I'm using in Orca Slicer, I'm using those on the Quiddy X Plus. Really, really good, and I really, really like the slicer. But for God's sake, please stop making your own slicers for every single machine, because I'm running out of space on my desktop. Like, they're everywhere. It's unnecessary. You're not a software company. Make a profile for something that exists and remove the administration burden for yourselves. You then don't have to update the slicer every 3 to 6 months because someone else is doing it for you. Anyway, back to the actual machine itself. Rant over. But let's get back to the machine itself. Noise-wise, so with the covers off, with the top cover off and the door open, it's louder than the X1 Carbon with its door open and top off. But with its door closed and its top cover on, it is quieter than the Bambu 1 X Carbon with its door closed and its top cover on. So it's a little bit of, it's a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because frankly, there's not much of everything I've printed here has been printed in PLA. I've printed it with the top cover on. I've seen no real issues. My bridging has been good. The layer heights have been good. Everything's consistent. I've not really seen much, if any reason at all, for you to print without the top cover on. There's not an airflow issue or anything like that. The prints that it's done a really good job. So let's dive into what some of those prints look like. Okay, so let's start with our benchy. So you can see here, get that in focus, there we go. We've got a little bit of ringing just here. I was really trying to push the speed on this, but the overhangs are really quite nice. We've got a nice clean stack. There's no retraction issues or stringing. Just that little bulge there as it was going as quick as it could around that original part there. We have the all-in-one print test. So this test came out really nicely, if we can get that to focus. There we go. So let's start with overhangs. Overhangs on the steep are all the way up to 65 passable and all the way up to about 70 on the steeper overhang. You can see that you can actually read most of the text that's on this, which you can't normally do. Here we've got our retraction test. There you go. Touch of string in there, but nothing major. You can see our bridging test has come out really nicely, and so have our circles. Overall, that's a really, really nice test. We then have our vase. Let's pull this out a bit. So, no missed lines. Very, very good extrusion. This has come out exceptionally nice. Exceptionally nice. Perfect first layer. No elephant's foot. Really good. A really, really good vase there. We've then got this guy. So this is a Genji sword that I managed to find online. So all of these sections just fit into each other and they collapse down. You can see on the handle, we've got really, really nice quality surface finish. As good as anything that's come off of my Bambu easily. I would say that in creality print, you do suffer with a seam a little bit. So I still need to switch up the profile a touch, but all in all, a very, very nice print there. And then we come on to some sort of tolerance test ones. So this is a little turtle from Fab 365. This all clipped together very nicely. All the limbs move. Everything came together very, very nicely there. So very, very happy with that. Same with the robot. So the robot clips in nicely. Head moves freely. Arms move freely. Legs move freely. All very, very nicely printed. A really good test there. And then last but not least, we have the Dalek. So these side pieces come out here. Everything moves. And this front section here does open out to the side as well, like that. Again, the head moves all the way around. These are really good tolerance tests because obviously they all print together and then they all assemble. So the fact that this all clips together and stays there securely shows that really, really good tolerances. So I'm incredibly happy with how all of those prints turned out. So as you can see, the prints that we've done are really nice. They've come out really good. All these Fab 365s, all the tolerances have been good. Everything fitted together nicely. You know, the benchy came out really nicely. This complete test, you can see all the text. It's all really, really good. Is this machine ready for me to throw away my X1 Carbon and dive back into the creality world? No, but that's okay. So right now, my biggest gripe is that I have to go around the back of the machine to undo the filament spool holder. I have a 600mm deep bench, and right now this machine sits on the edge of that bench and the spool holder pretty much almost touches the wall. So I have to undo the spool holder, take the spool holder off with the spool, and then I can load up my next lot of filament. If we moved, instead of this, if I moved to an AMS that was on top, like the bamboo, we'd really be competing at that point. And let me just explain my reason why. Not because I need an AMS, because frankly, even with the bamboo, I do very, very little in the way of multicolored printing. But with the bamboo, I load my filament in, and there are two motors on my filament. There is the AMS that I plug it into, and that's enough torque to just push the filament through all the PFTE tube to get to the hot end, where the direct drive picks up the filament and drives it into the hot end. With this machine, there is one motor, and that's the motor that's on the tool head. So I now have to feed my filament all the way up the PFTE tube. There is a filament sensor on the back right of this, so you can't actually feed your filament all the way through. What you have to do is you have to take the PFTE tube out of the hot end, then disengage the hot end, take the filament out of the hot end, then pull that last length of filament through the PFTE tube, then finish pushing your new filament all the way through the PFTE tube to the hot end, put it back into the hot end, re-engage the lever, and then you're cooking with filament again. It's more than annoying. It's more than fiddly. It's a bad design choice. If they had made it so that there was either a feeder motor that was on the back, or even that they'd made it that the filament sensor was outside of the machine, so that you just had to disconnect it from there and pull it through that way. Both of those would have made that an easier task than it was. As it is, it's a bit fiddly. So, scores on the doors. So when we scored the bamboo, we gave that a 9.5 out of 10. And the only reason for the 0.5 was that build volume of 256 cubed was just, for us, not as versatile as I wanted it to be. This, I'm also going to give a 9.5 out of 10, but for a different reason. And the different reason is literally that we've now got the build volume that I think is most versatile. I think 300 by 300 is a very versatile build volume. There's not a lot of people that need to print much larger than that, and if you do, then you need to be cutting up your models more to fit onto a build plate like this, right? That's fine. But if I'd have had the AMS, or if I'd have had a slightly better way of feeding filament into the hot end, then I could have loved it, and I could have said that what we'd had here was a perfect machine. I just don't like at this point having to load filament from the back. I'd be fine if the filament loaded from the inside. I'd be fine if it loaded from the top. You can't do either of those. When their AMS comes along, we could very well push this into a machine that, in my opinion, beats the X1. The print quality is absolutely there. I want to be clear about that. It prints beautifully. I do not like creality print as a slicer, but that isn't this machine's fault. And there will be other slicers that you will be able to use eventually. Orca Slicer is already moving towards that working. And you can use Cura or other machines. You just can't really use the Wi-Fi stuff for it because that plugin isn't there. So you just have to download it onto a USB stick, and there's a USB port in the front that you could use. I want to use the Wi-Fi feature, so I am currently stuck in creality print. But a 9.5 out of 10, this is so close to being a great machine. Now, one caveat that I want to make is a couple of channels have, well, no more than a couple of channels, a lot of channels have tested the smaller K1. Now, you would think that if it works in the K1 Max, it must therefore work just as well in the K1. I have heard different things about the K1 than I have about the K1 Max. I haven't used the K1, I've only used the K1 Max, so I can't do a comparison between the two. The K1 Max performs really, really well. It does really good surface quality, consistent extrusion, the part cooling is good, the bed is a flat surface PEI, and it's very, very good. I've done a light coat of hairspray and I'm popping models off nice and easy, but things are staying on there. I'm not getting any lift, I'm not getting any warp. For me, the only thing that's a bit of a pain is just that loading of filament. And if it was outside of that, I could even forgive the slicer to an extent, because that will change. And you could use, you know, Cura and just use the USB feature. But it's so close to being perfect. Right now, this is a toss-up. My go-to printer was absolutely my X1 Carbon. Not because I'm a bamboo fanboy, because it's my best FDM printer that works consistently out of the gate every single time. Now, it is a toss-up between the two, whether I go for the K1 Max or whether I go for the bamboo. And frankly, what I'm doing a lot now is the prints that I'm doing are multi-part prints. I'm putting one part on the bamboo, one part on this, and at the end of it, you really can't see a quality difference between the two. They are performing fantastically, and I'm glad that companies like Bamboo are pushing other companies to push the envelope. We aren't just getting rehashed old designs, we are getting things that really do compete. And that's what's important. It's one of the main reasons why I do really love the K1 Max, because it shows that when push comes to shove, Creality can pull something out of the bag and bring something new for them to the market, rather than a redo of a previous model. So that's where we are, guys. You've seen how good the prints are. We're going to carry on doing some more projects with this. I'm going to do a full-size helmet in this because it's big enough. We're going to do some other filament tests, and we'll do some speed tests as well. And we'll do sort of another battle of champions, right? We'll do this against the X1 Carbon, against probably the Quiddy Plus 3, which we've also got in the shop at the moment as well. And we'll see between those three who's producing the best results, the quickest results, all of that stuff. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you've got a K1 Max or if you're thinking of getting one. There is a link in the video description if you want to pick one up yourself. Just to be clear, that's not an affiliate link. That is just a, if you want to go and get one, go and get one. We don't do affiliate links on this channel. That's not how things work here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next video.